If you were looking to buy a sublimation printer, should you buy a Sawgrass printer or an Epson EcoTank printer? Stay tuned, you won't want to miss this video. Hey, what is going on? The printer guy here, and in this video I want to talk to you about two different brands of printers for sublimation printing that you may be considering. Well, in this video I'm going to break down the differences between these two types of printers and which one you potentially should buy. At the end of this video I will give you my take on who should buy which printer, meaning what is your situation and what is the printer able to do for your situation, and so which one would be best for you specifically. And of course, anytime during this video you can go down to the description box and there will be links for every printer I end up talking about and sublimation ink for Epson EcoTank printers. So up front, before I even get into the video, those links are down there for your convenience. There will also be video chapters down below this video. If this video ends up being helpful, please make sure to like the video. Any questions at all, comment below. And if you want more content like this, please make sure to subscribe. All right, so some of the main differences that you will see between an Epson EcoTank printer versus a Sawgrass printer, you're going to see a big difference in price. So the prices will be different. Now, it's important that I explain, when I talk about Epson EcoTank printers in this video, I'm not talking about dedicated sublimation Epson EcoTanks like the F170 or the F570. Those are going to be different. The prices are different and what they're able to do. I'm mainly talking about standard printers on the Epson EcoTank side, because on the Sawgrass side, the two models I'm mainly going to be talking about are dedicated sublimation printers. So I'm mainly going to be talking about Epson EcoTank printers that you may even own one already and you can convert into a sublimation printer. Although right here from the beginning, I do want to say, when I talk about the standard Epson EcoTank printers, if you're buying brand new, all you have to do is install sublimation ink and not install the regular ink that comes in the packaging. As long as you do that, that Epson EcoTank printer is now a sublimation printer. There's really no conversion. The conversion only is really needed if you already were using that Epson EcoTank printer as a regular printer with regular ink. Then in that case, you can do a conversion. You can take out the ink and install sublimation ink. Now, I do have videos on my channel showing you how to do this conversion, and so I'll be leaving links down in the description below with videos that I've done doing that conversion. So the first couple of printers that I want to talk about are standard sized printers, which means that the max width is going to be 8.5 inches. Now the length is going to vary by printer. Now when I talk about the Epson EcoTank printer, I'll be using the Epson EcoTank 3950. That is one of the newer Epson EcoTank printers in the lineup. It's going to be a mid-grade Epson EcoTank printer, but I do want to talk about another option that's even more affordable than that one. Now you can go up and down in the Epson EcoTank lineup and get more features, but I'll talk more about that later on in the video. But I want to compare the Epson EcoTank 3950 to the Sawgrass SG500. Now, at the time of this recording, the MSRP price on Amazon for the Sawgrass SG500 is $650. In contrast, the Epson EcoTank 3950 is $400. So you have about a $250 difference. Now, I did do a whole analysis and comparison between these printers and the other ones I'll talk about here in this video on my website, bestprinterstech.com. So if you wanted a more in-depth analysis, check out that blog post. But generally speaking, the Sawgrass SG500 is going to be a dedicated printer that is going to give you high quality sublimation prints. Your color consistency is going to be very stable. Everything is calibrated for sublimation printing right out of the box. The intended function of the printer is to do sublimation printing. Although your ink costs are pretty expensive, you have to buy dedicated Sawgrass branded ink. Now, potentially there's room there for third-party ink, but I really won't get into that because that's not really standard practice with the Sawgrass printers. So the general assumption is that the ink cost is going to be very high. Now, when we look at warranties, there's no penalty when you do sublimation printing because that's the intended use for the Sawgrass printer, and that's kind of a contrast to the Epson EcoTank. And there's very low maintenance on this Sawgrass SG500. Now, the next Sawgrass I'll talk about is the SG1000, comparing to another Epson EcoTank printer. And a lot of what I've talked about here in this video really converts over to that printer as well. The only difference between the SG500 and the 1000 is that the 1000 is going to be a large format printer. But I'm getting ahead of myself, but I did want to draw that similarity between those two because a lot of what I'll talk about here will really apply to the next model up. So you have a lot of reliability, standard sublimation output, low maintenance because this printer was made for sublimation printing, although the price is going to be higher in every regard. Now, when we look at the Epson EcoTank 3950, this printer is going to be a standard inkjet printer, dye-based ink, and it's really not intended necessarily for sublimation ink, but somewhere along the line, it began to be used as a sublimation printer because it does have that ability. It does have the ability to do high-quality sublimation prints. I've done many different prints on this channel using an Epson EcoTank 2400, which has pretty much the same print head and ink system that the 3950 has. It's just a much more simplified version, and I'll talk about that printer here in just a few moments. But the differences that you'll see between the Sawgrass and the Epson EcoTank printer is that the Epson EcoTanks are not intended for sublimation printing, at least the standard ones. And so there's going to be a conversion, or at least you'll need to just install the sublimation ink and then begin using it in that way. Now, one of the biggest things is that there is a lot of maintenance required for the Epson EcoTank printers because that thick ink is going through a system that typically would take on thinner, dye-based ink. There's a lot more potential for clogging. There's a lot more potential for lower quality, and then you can get that quality back up, but it will require some maintenance. So there's some maintenance costs involved there, but they're not big costs. They are just routine costs, and you'll have to keep an eye on maintenance with an Epson EcoTank printer. Now, most of the time, your warranty will be voided if you use sublimation ink with the Epson EcoTank printers. Now, that may or may not matter to you, but that is the case. So those are really the biggest differences. If you wanted a more in-depth analysis, of course, go to my website, go to that blog post. The link to my website will be down in the description below. It breaks it out into different categories, but those are the major differences you really would have. So you really have to make the decision. There's about a $250 difference between the printer cost. I'm not including all the other costs of like ink and everything else like that, materials. And so you can do your own analysis at home with those things included. But just right from the get-go, when we're looking at the price, if you're looking to save money, if you're on a budget, I would lean towards the Epson EcoTank 3950 and just assume and know that you'll have to do extra maintenance. There's a maintenance box that can be swapped on it. I'll leave a link down in the description below for the maintenance box that fits most of these Epson EcoTank printers, especially the 3950. It's the T04D1. Actually, Best Printers, we sell those maintenance boxes. They're very easy to swap out, especially on these newer models. Now, with the Sawgrass SG500, you also will probably need to do power cleanings, print head cleanings frequently. You'll have to print frequently. You can't leave the printer sitting. Now, if you didn't really want to deal with all of that and you would rather just spend the money on a dedicated sublimation printer and you had a bigger budget, then go with the Sawgrass SG500. I will say I do like the option of the Epson EcoTank printers because you can convert back from sublimation ink to regular ink. And so that's a really nice option, is to be able to convert back and forth. Now, the conversion process is a lengthier process and requires some effort and patience, but it can be done. When you buy a Sawgrass printer, you're just buying a sublimation printer. There's really no reverse compatibility back to regular ink. So that's one of the things I really like. Now, really quickly here in the video, I kind of want to bring this in as a midpoint. I really wanted to mention this, that I use the EcoTank 3950 against the SG500 because it's comparable in the regard that it's a mid-range, similar standard size. But my recommendation is, if you were going to try to save money and were on a budget, I would go with the Epson EcoTank 2400. That is the printer that I chose to start out with sublimation printing. And it's simply because when you're doing sublimation printing, you don't need all the bells and whistles on the Epson EcoTank lineup, like the big display, the touch screen, the automatic document feeder. All those things are not necessary with a sublimation printer, but I used it just to be fair with the comparison. If you compare the 2400 to the 3950, you're looking at an MSRP as of today, 11/13/2025, $160. So your savings dramatically increase. Now, I will say that the cost of sublimation ink, especially with a brand like ours here at Best Printers, you're going to save a lot of money on ink. The ink is going to cost you about $25 to $30 per set. If you subscribe on Amazon, you can save even more. So there's a lot of savings here when it comes to sublimation printing. If you're just getting started and you have a low budget, this is the route I would go. So the point in mentioning the 3950, you're already saving against the SG500, but with the 2400, you take that savings even further and you're saving even more money. So there's a really big difference there. Now, these differences, they will carry over to this next part of the video where I will be talking about the large format Sawgrass SG1000 versus the Epson EcoTank 15,000. All right, so now we move on to the large format sublimation printers. And initially I had said 8.5 is the standard width. That's a standard size printer. Now we're moving up to a larger format. So we're talking about over 8.5 inches in width. Now, the length will vary depending on the printer, like I said, but really when you're doing large format sublimation printing, well, we're really looking at that width. And so with the 15,000, you have a 13 by 19 page that you can print. And with the SG1000, which is the large format standard printer, is going to be 11 by 17. So you have a small difference there of 2 inches more on the Epson EcoTank printer. So those 2 inches could really make a big difference depending on the type of projects that you plan on doing. Now, everything that I said, again, with each one of these brands kind of carries over into each one of these. The only difference is really just that sizing, the width capacity on the different sizes. 11 by 17 on the Sawgrass and 13 by 19 on the Epson EcoTank. Everything as far as more maintenance on the Epson EcoTank applies to the 15,000 model. And then the simplicity of the Sawgrass and just spending the money up front, but then having a low maintenance experience, not maintenance free, but low maintenance, because there's maintenance that's required on every printer, but it's just a lot higher with an Epson EcoTank printer that was a standard printer that's now been converted into sublimation. So here's where we see the biggest, the most dramatic difference in price. And this is why so many people do this conversion. These conversions with the Epson EcoTank printers is that if you can get away with and are able to do the conversion, there is a lot of savings there. So with the Sawgrass SG1000, your MSRP as of 11/13/2025 is $1,704.50. So that is a big price tag for a large format sublimation printer. In contrast, the Epson EcoTank 15,000 is $550. That is such a big difference in price between those two printers, and you even get 2 inches wider on the Epson EcoTank 15,000. So you even get a larger format with the Epson EcoTank versus the Sawgrass SG1000. Now, again, more maintenance is going to be required on the 15,000. You'll have to swap out the maintenance box more frequently. You may need to do a power cleaning, print head cleanings, and continually print. You can't allow these Epson EcoTank printers to sit for long periods of time without printing, without there being major clogs. But if you stay on top of those things, that cost is so dramatically different that I believe it's worth it, especially if you were on a budget and wanted to do large format sublimation printing. The Epson EcoTank 15,000 is a really good option. And with these large format printers, I would say I'm leaning way more on the Epson EcoTank 15,000 because the SG1000 is just so expensive. Now, going back and looking at the SG500 and the Epson EcoTank 3950, there's a little bit more of an argument there to say you can lean towards the Sawgrass if you had more of a budget. But then when you bring in the factor of the 2400 model, that really creates a dramatic difference as well. So really, I would say if you had a really big budget and maybe you were doing this for business, let's say, and you wanted reliability, you can't sit there and do all the maintenance and have that time being taken away versus just having something that's ready to go. Then I would lean towards the Sawgrass. But really it's difficult because I would be more prone to taking on a little bit more maintenance for the cost savings initially. And also that same sublimation ink that you can use for the 3950, the 2400, you can also use with the 15,000 because the 15,000 is a 4-color printer. Even if it wasn't, there are sublimation inks out there that do 6 colors and beyond that as well. So again, I did do a deeper analysis between those two large format printers. You can see that on my website, bestprinterstech.com, and it's a more in-depth analysis than this video, but I really hope this video ended up being helpful. If it was, please make sure to like. Any questions at all, comment below. If you want more content like this, please make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time. Thank you so much for watching until the end of this video. I handpicked 2 videos that are here on the screen for you to watch next. Also consider subscribing to this channel. There's so much helpful content for you if you're a printer owner, and it's just good to have a resource like this for you in the future, whether you're dealing with a printer that's not printing well or you need more printer recommendations. So I look forward to seeing you again in another video.